to a bank with $300 in your account and nobody notices you. Walk into that same branch with $250,000 and suddenly someone offers you coffee and introduces themselves as your relationship manager. Same bank, same employees, same week. Meet Jason Miller and Sarah Bennett. Same age, same city, same profession. Their paychecks hit the same bank every other Friday. The only difference is the amount sitting in their accounts. Jason keeps around $500 between checking and savings. Sarah has over 6 figures saved. Jason gets automated emails. Sarah gets personal phone calls. Jason waits on hold. Sarah has a direct number. Most people think they know why. They think banks simply love rich people, but that's not the truth. Because after spending years studying how the financial industry actually works, I discovered something most people never realize. Banks don't make their biggest profits from wealthy customers. They make them from customers who are always just a little short. And once you understand why, you'll never look at your bank account the same way again. My name is Nick, and after years of studying how money flows through the system, I can promise you one thing. The commercials are lying. Not directly, but strategically. They show smiling couples buying homes, happy families opening savings accounts, retirees enjoying sunsets. What they don't show you is the machine underneath, because the machine doesn't run on wealth, it runs on need. And the people who need money the most often pay the highest price for it. Before any of this makes sense, you need to understand something important. Banks don't really sell money, they sell access to money. And access becomes incredibly profitable when people don't have enough of it. Think about Jason. He's not irresponsible, he's not lazy, and he's definitely not stupid. Last year, he had nearly $4,000 saved. Then his transmission failed. 3 months later, his dog needed emergency surgery. Then inflation pushed everything higher. Groceries cost more, insurance cost more, gas cost more, and suddenly that cushion disappeared. Now, Jason lives paycheck to paycheck. The bank doesn't see any of that. It doesn't see the stress. It doesn't see the bad luck. It doesn't see the nights Jason spends staring at the ceiling, wondering whether the next paycheck will be enough. On a spreadsheet, Jason is simply another profitable customer. And that's where things start getting interesting. Because the customer banks secretly love most isn't the millionaire, it's the person who needs the system every single month. Because every time Jason comes up short, the machine quietly goes to work. Not because someone at the bank hates him, not because there's some secret room full of executives laughing at people. Nothing that dramatic. The truth is actually simpler. Systems don't need villains. They only need incentives, and incentives reward whatever produces money. Jason gets paid, his bills go out. Rent, groceries, gas, insurance, streaming subscriptions he forgot to cancel. By the 3rd week, things get tight. By the 4th week, one unexpected expense can throw everything off. That's when the machine begins to feed. Maybe his balance drops below the minimum requirement. Monthly fee. Maybe he misses a payment. Late fee. Maybe he uses his credit card to cover groceries. Interest. Maybe he overdrafts by $20. Another fee. None of these amounts seem catastrophic by themselves. $30 here, $25 there, $40 somewhere else. But banks don't need one massive payment. They need millions of tiny payments every day from millions of people. And those numbers become enormous. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. The people with the least money often pay the most for access to it. Someone paying 24% interest isn't doing it because they enjoy it. They're doing it because they don't have another option. Someone carrying a balance isn't necessarily irresponsible. They're trying to survive. And survival can be expensive. Meanwhile, Sarah's life looks completely different. Not because she's a genius. Not because she won the lottery. And certainly not because she understands some secret Wall Street formula. Sarah spent years driving the same Toyota Camry while everyone around her upgraded. She skipped expensive vacations. She avoided lifestyle inflation. She quietly built a cushion. And eventually, something strange happened. She stopped needing the bank. And that's the part nobody talks about, because the moment you stop needing the system suddenly starts needing you. The fees disappear. The conversations become friendlier. The waiting times become shorter. Suddenly, someone wants to discuss wealth management. Suddenly, someone offers premium benefits. Suddenly, the institution that charged Jason $35 for being short starts competing to keep Sarah happy. And the strange thing is Sarah herself hasn't changed. She's still the same person. The only thing that changed was the number in her account. And that number changed the entire relationship because banks don't really reward wealth. They reward leverage. And leverage changes everything. Here's what most people never realize. A bank's favorite customer isn't the person with the biggest balance. It's the person who consistently pays interest. Think about it. If Sarah keeps $200,000 in an account and never borrows, never overdrafts, and negotiates better rates, how much money is the bank really making from her? Not nearly as much as people think. Jason, on the other hand, uses a credit card, occasionally carries a balance, pays interest, uses checking services, sometimes gets hit with fees. In the cold language of accounting, Jason is more profitable. And that's not an opinion. That's math. Consumer banks make billions every year from interest payments and fees. And those profits don't come from people sitting on mountains of cash. They come from ordinary people trying to make it to next Friday, which is why the entire system behaves in ways that seem backwards. People with money get lower mortgage rates. People without money pay higher ones. People with strong credit get better offers. People with weaker credit pay more. The people who need help the most often end up paying the highest price, not because the system is evil, but because risk has a price and desperation usually pays it. That's why wealth changes everything, not because money buys happiness, but because money buys options, and options are incredibly valuable. When your car breaks down and you have savings, it's an inconvenience. When your car breaks down and you don't, it's a crisis. Same event. Completely different experience. Jason knows what crisis feels like. He checks his bank account before buying groceries. He hopes nothing unexpected happens. He silently calculates how many days remain until payday. He lies awake at 2 a.m, wondering if the strange noise coming from his car can survive another month. Sarah remembers those days. She spent years there. She knows exactly what it feels like, which is why she never talks about her money, because the truth is she wasn't always Sarah with $200,000. She was once Sarah with $200, and she learned something during that journey. Wealth isn't about luxury. Wealth is about breathing room. It's about sleeping peacefully. It's about not making decisions from fear. And fear is expensive. Fear makes people accept terrible loans. Fear makes people keep credit card balances. Fear makes people desperate. And desperation is where the machine makes its money. Because every predatory product ever created feeds on one thing: your inability to wait. The payday lender needs urgency. The credit card company loves impatience. The buy, now pay, later app depends on temptation. The entire ecosystem runs best when people are stressed, because stressed people don't negotiate. Stressed people don't compare options. Stressed people just need relief. And relief almost always comes with a price. What makes this even stranger is that banks themselves understand this better than anyone. They know exactly when a customer stops being profitable and starts becoming valuable. Those sound like the same thing. They're not. A profitable customer pays the bank. A valuable customer gives the bank something to fight over. And once you understand the difference, you understand why wealthy people seem to live in an entirely different financial world. Because they do. When Sarah crossed 6 figures in savings, something interesting happened. Suddenly, credit card companies started sending premium offers. Banks started offering private advisors. Mortgage lenders competed for her business. Investment firms called her. Everyone wanted her attention, not because she became smarter, not because she became more deserving, but because money attracts competition, and competition benefits the customer. Jason experiences the opposite. Nobody competes for desperate people. Desperate people take whatever they're offered. That's why bad loans target people with no alternatives. That's why payday lenders don't open offices in wealthy neighborhoods. That's why 20% interest rates are marketed to people already struggling. The less freedom you have, the more expensive everything becomes. Which brings us to one of the greatest financial ironies in modern life. Money gets cheaper the more of it you have. Billionaires borrow at rates ordinary people can only dream about. Wealthy families refinance debt at incredibly low costs. Businesses with strong balance sheets receive favorable treatment. Meanwhile, ordinary people swipe credit cards at 20% interest and wonder why they can never get ahead. They're running uphill while others are walking downhill. And most people think the answer is earning more money. Sometimes it is, but often the answer is simply owning enough assets that your decisions stop being controlled by panic. Because panic is expensive, patience is profitable, and almost every financial advantage in existence comes from having the ability to wait. Sarah can wait, Jason can't, and that single difference changes everything. Because when you can wait, you negotiate better. When you can wait, you invest instead of borrowing. When you can wait, you walk away from bad deals. And the ability to walk away is one of the most powerful forms of wealth in existence. That's why banks don't really fear wealthy people. They fear customers who no longer need them. Because a customer who doesn't need you is a customer you must compete for. And competition changes the balance of power. Suddenly the house isn't setting all the rules anymore. Suddenly the player has choices. And choices are dangerous to systems built on dependency. Eventually, Jason noticed something strange. No matter how hard he worked, it felt like he was running on a treadmill. Every raise disappeared. Every bonus vanished. Every small emergency pushed him backward. He wasn't living recklessly. He wasn't buying yachts or designer watches. He was just trying to live. And yet somehow the finish line kept moving. Sound familiar? Because millions of people live inside the exact same cycle. They make money, spend money, borrow money, repay money, repeat, year after year, decade after decade, and eventually they begin to believe that's just how life works. But Sarah discovered something that changed everything. Income matters, but ownership matters more, because income requires your time. Assets don't. Your salary stops when you stop working. Assets don't care whether you're awake or asleep. They just keep going. And once Sarah understood that, she stopped asking herself how to make more money and started asking how to own more things that make money. Investments, businesses, index funds, dividend stocks, real estate. Assets became employees that never called in sick. They didn't complain. They didn't ask for raises. They simply worked. And slowly the balance shifted. One asset became two. Two became five. Five became 10. Until eventually her money started contributing more to her life than her labor. That's when everything changed, because the goal was never to become rich. The goal was to become difficult to exploit. That's what financial freedom really means. Not private jets, not mansions, not supercars. Freedom means saying no. No to bad jobs. No to terrible loans. No to toxic bosses. No to desperate decisions. Freedom means patience. And patience terrifies industries built around urgency. Think about how modern advertising works. Limited time offer. Act now. Don't miss out. Zero down payment. Buy. Now pay later. Everything screams urgency because urgency kills logic. People make their worst financial decisions when they feel pressure, and entire industries know this, which is why scarcity is so profitable. Fear is profitable. Anxiety is profitable. But patience makes companies compete for your money instead of trapping you with theirs. That's the great reversal nobody talks about. When you're broke, you chase money. When you build enough wealth, money starts chasing you. Banks compete. Credit card companies compete. Investment firms compete. Employers compete. Suddenly, everyone wants your business. Not because you're special, but because you have options. And options are powerful because the one thing every system struggles against is a person who can afford to wait. And that's the part most people misunderstand. This was never really about banks. It was never about credit cards or interest rates or checking accounts. It was always about control, because the moment you have enough money to breathe, enough money to wait, enough money to walk away, the entire world starts treating you differently. Not because you've become a different person, but because desperation no longer gets a vote in your decisions. Jason eventually learned that the system wasn't designed by villains sitting in dark rooms. It was simply optimized around people living paycheck to paycheck, optimized around urgency, optimized around stress, optimized around customers who always needed just a little more time and just a little more money. And once he understood that, he stopped trying to win the game by playing harder and started trying to win by changing the rules. He paid off debt. He built an emergency fund. He invested consistently. Nothing dramatic, nothing glamorous, no lottery tickets, no secret formulas. Just patience repeated over and over again. And years later, something strange happened. The anxiety disappeared. The late-night calculations disappeared. The fear disappeared. Problems didn't vanish, but panic did. And that's when he realized wealth isn't really measured by the size of your house or the logo on your car. Wealth is measured by how many bad decisions you can afford to refuse, because the greatest luxury in the world isn't status. It isn't fame. It isn't even unlimited money. It's time. It's patience. It's the ability to say, "No thanks, I'll wait." And the funny thing is, banks understand this better than anyone. They don't hate wealthy people. They simply can't control people who no longer need them. Because a customer who can walk away is a customer that must be respected. And respect in finance usually looks a lot like better treatment. So if you're still on the side where every paycheck disappears too quickly and every unexpected expense feels like a disaster, don't confuse where you are with where you'll always be. Jason wasn't unlucky forever. Sarah wasn't wealthy forever. Neither of them were born on opposite sides of the line. They simply spent enough years making different decisions until one day the balance shifted. Because wealth isn't a personality trait. It isn't luck. It isn't talent. More often than not, it's patience compounded over time. And the people who eventually escape aren't always the smartest. They're usually the ones stubborn enough to keep going long after everyone else quits. So stop chasing the appearance of wealth and start building the kind that buys peace. Stop renting money and start owning assets. Stop making decisions from fear and start making them from patience. Because the moment you stop needing the system every single month is the moment the system starts needing you. And that's when the entire game changes. Subscribe to the Wealth Code YouTube channel, and I'll see you in the next one.